we can improve treatment for tens of millions of patients, what a great contribution to be able to make.
Steve is the CEO of Phathom Pharmaceuticals, and he has spent decades operating at the intersection of science, commercialization, and scale. Steve has led organizations through pivotal transitions from clinical promise all the way to real-world execution, where capital is at risk, patients are waiting, and decisions actually matter.
We have the good fortune of having an amazing drug. VOQUEZNA is a meaningful improvement in the treatment of GERD versus classes of drugs that have been available for decades and the standard of care that's existed for decades.
What advice would you give brand leaders trying to win in this environment?
The key variable was understanding the patient journey. Understand who needs our product, who is going to be motivated enough to seek out our product at the patient level and physician level, and for whom does it solve the problem so compellingly that they're willing to go through the prior authorization requirement in a world where they can just write a generic omeprazole script and not have to do any work.
I'm very excited about this. You know, Steve, it's funny, Steve, I don't know if you know this, but you were one of the very first people that I met with that taught me a lot about life sciences. I don't know if you realize that.
I did not realize that. I thought you were an expert at the time we met. So you made it sound convincing. I was willing to go with it.
Hey, listen, I mean, you really, I mean, I'll never forget, we were in Palo Alto. We went and got Thai food together.
Yep. Yeah, we went to Tamarind in Palo Alto. That was fabulous.
Great place.
That's one of my favorite restaurants, by the way. That was great.
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah. And again, you were one of the first CEOs that I really spent meaningful time with, who really understands all aspects of the pharmaceutical value chain. And I remember that dinner conversation. You taught me a lot. So I don't know. I didn't know if you knew that, but I wanted to go on the record that there's a lot that you're responsible for here, Steve.
That's very kind of you. Appreciate that.
But no, look, I mean, just to introduce you quickly to the audience, for those that don't know who Steve is the CEO of Phathom Pharmaceuticals, and he has spent decades operating at the intersection of science, commercialization, and scale. I mean, Steve has led organizations through, I want to say, pivotal transitions from clinical promise all the way to real-world execution, where capital is at risk, patients are waiting, and decisions actually matter. Phathom is at one of those moments now. And so the company is no longer hypothetical, right? It's commercial. There's an approved asset. There's real prescribers. There's real patients. There's real expectations from the market. And again, this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm excited about this. It's many years overdue. So let's jump into it. I mean, Steve,
terrific. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it. Let's have some fun. I mean, Steve, look, you've stepped into this CEO role at Phathom at a very, very critical moment. When you evaluated the role, what did you see in the asset and the organization that really made this the right CEO opportunity for you, especially given where the company was in its life cycle? So
a combination of factors came together that this just made a lot of sense. First and foremost, we have the good fortune of having an amazing drug. I mean, VOQUEZNA is a meaningful improvement in the treatment of GERD versus classes of drugs that have been available for decades and the standard of care that's existed for decades. Just in terms of first principles, the whole point in treating GERD is to raise pH in the stomach, and PCAB, which is our new mechanism of action, can raise pH in the stomach meaningfully better than a PPI. We can create more elevation. If you can reduce acidity, that's, from a first principles perspective, do the thing that matters in the disease, and that's going to make a really big difference. This drug has a 10-year history in Japan and has been at various times, not just the number one prescribed GERD treatment, but actually the number one prescribed drug in Japan for periods of time. And so it's clear the drug works. It has an opportunity to make an enormous difference for patients. And that's one of the things that drives me in the context of why I choose to be in the healthcare business and why do I choose to run companies like this. It's really about how do we help as many people as possible There isn't a bigger indication. GERD is 65 million people in the US. I mean, virtually everybody you meet over the age of 40 or 50, either, themselves or their partner or somebody that they're close to has the condition. And so if we can improve treatment for tens of millions of patients, what a great contribution to be able to make. So that's what initially captured my interest and drew my attention. Clinical data was terrific. And the early launch in the first year, the company was already getting traction. And so it was clear that physicians want the product. It's clear it makes a difference for patients. It's clear it was already on a nice ramp. And it was just a matter of, what the company needed was to figure out, how do we do this profitably? We could get the ramp going, but how do we get there profitably? And I enjoy commercial challenges. I enjoy building commercial organizations. It's the thing I thrive on doing. So this just fit really well.
Steve, I wish that we were recording our pre-podcast banter, because the thing that I did convey and reveal is that, multiple people in my family have GERD, including my wife. Her whole family has GERD. So we're all among the 65 million patients who are, dealing with the adjustable mattresses that go up and down in the middle of the night. Those really unfortunate, tough symptoms you have when you lie down flat, where, it's interrupting your sleep. It's not a fun condition to deal with.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about, what excites you the most about the Phathom's product, specifically within the GERD space. But, GERD is, as we discussed a little bit about, it's a crowded category. And on the surface, many of these therapeutic treatment options look similar. From a clinical perspective or a clinical standpoint, I'm curious, what actually makes this drug compelling for GERD?
So your story of having family members who have GERD is so familiar that all of us are experiencing this, either ourselves or loved ones have the condition. It's that common. I personally have GERD. I switched to our drug around the time that I started with the company, and oh my God, it's a totally different experience. It is a totally different experience. So it's interesting. The GERD market has lots of therapies and has had lots of therapies available for decades, but there's a meaningful difference in the outcome for a patient if you can raise further. And just as an N of one, I was on omeprazole for 8-9 years. I thought it worked. It actually reduced my heartburn. Didn't get rid of it. I had to adjust my lifestyle. I would be careful about what I ate. I would sip wine very slowly. I would never eat spicy food. I was just really careful not to trigger it at all, because, it worked. It sort of got rid of the pain, but didn't really get rid of the pain adequately. And I'd get breakthroughs periodically, and, you add Tums whenever you get a breakthrough. And so, you'd sort of get through the process. As soon as I started taking this drug, oh my God, it's totally different. I put Tabasco on things. I sincerely enjoy spicy foods. I just couldn't have spicy food for 10 years. And so it changes your quality of life perceptibly in a really meaningful way when you have the ability to get rid of the thing that's causing you significant pain. And for GERD patients, it's painful. I mean, people minimize it. It's just heartburn. No, it's really painful. It's really painful, and it causes people to stay up at night, and it disrupts sleep, and it disrupts quality of life, and it just has an enormous impact. So we have an opportunity to have a really big impact on any number of patients. You were talking about the breadth of the products that are in the space. And it's interesting, standard of care in GERD hasn't really changed in decades. People have been using PPIs for 20, 30 years at this point, and that's the best available therapy. And if you are still getting breakthroughs, you might add an H2 receptor antagonist, or you might add antacids to it. But, once you've been put on a PPI and you've doubled your dose and your BID dosing, there's not much more that you can do. Now there is. With VOQUEZNA, if you're still in pain, this is the right product for you to think about using. And that gets to our core commercial opportunity. We don't really think about our commercial opportunity being the 65 million patients with GERD. 70% of those patients, 60 to 70% of those patients are adequately served on current therapy. They're on a PPI, they're under control, they're not in much pain, they're not going to have a reason to switch. But 30 to 40% of those patients are still in pain. If you're still experiencing significant pain, that's what's causing you to go to your primary care physician to say, Doc, this isn't working for me. Maybe they switch you to a second PPI, maybe they double your dose. If you're still in pain, they're going to send you to a gastroenterologist to get scoped to see if you have erosions or if you have Barrett's or if you have some other condition. And that patient who's got GERD, who's still in pain, that's who needs our drug.
Makes That makes a lot of sense. And, to those in the audience that might be a little less familiar with what GERD is, to Steve's point just now, Phathom's product is designed to raise pH higher than PPIs. It's designed to do it more quickly, and it's designed to keep the acid controlled more consistently. And if you think about why that matters from a medical perspective, healing requires a higher pH. It's not just about less acid, it's about actually having a higher. So the esophagus doesn't heal just because acid is reduced a little. It heals when acid stays above a certain threshold long enough. So I just want to quickly clarify that for many of you that might be a little less familiar with the mechanism of action here. So really, by pushing the pH higher, and to Steve's point, by holding it there, the environment in the esophagus shifts from something that is centered around less damage to something that centers more around actual healing. And the thing that I've heard, Steve, and I'm sure you've heard the same, is many GERD patients that are on PPIs are telling me, you know what, Chase, I'm feeling better when I'm on a PPI, but I'm still not well. Right. And really, when we break down why, it's because, as you and I both know, acid often breaks through overnight. It breaks through early in the morning. It breaks through between doses. So if you're able to have a more consistent pH, that control will enable fewer surprise symptoms, fewer bad days mixed in with the good, and just enables more convenience for the patient. So
more consistent pain relief and more consistent, better quality of life if you don't have breakthrough pain.
I'm curious, Steve, this is obviously a highly differentiated product going after, as you and I discussed, a large market. I want to dig a little bit deeper into really what launch excellence means now. Everybody talks about launch excellence, but I feel like the phrase in some way has somewhat lost its meaning, right? In today's market, you have payer pressure, you've got skeptical prescribers, you've got tighter capital, and really, I want to dig a little bit deeper into what actually matters in a launch, and really what are the things that you're thinking about when it comes to a product launch centered in this type of category.
So I think that there are multiple components of that, and I'm going to paraphrase a comment that our head of sales makes on a regular basis that I find super helpful, because I think this really is critical, which is, to be in front of the right customers and to be excellent in front of the right customers, meaning having real clarity of messaging, having clarity on the value proposition, having clarity on how that customer is going to grow through their utilization. And so first, let's make sure we're in the right place, that we're talking to the right folks. And that, by the way, is one of the things that we've done at Phathom over this past year since I joined, is we've realigned who we're calling on. If you think about the market overall, 80% of PPI scripts are written by primary care physicians. 20% of PPI scripts are written by gastroenterologists or the APPs that work with gastroenterologists. So one would say, okay, this is a primary care product, but that's not actually true. If you think about the patient journey that we were talking about, where a patient who is still experiencing heartburn is going back to their primary care physician, getting double dosed, and then being sent to a gastroenterologist if they are still in pain, the patient who's at the gastroenterology clinic is the patient who is in the most pain. So that's the right place. So first, let's make sure we're at the right place and we're calling on the right customers. And then let's make sure we're excellent in the way we're calling on those customers. Let's make sure our messaging is exactly right and is really clear for that customer, depending upon where they are in their adoption journey. So the message that we're going to deliver to a physician who has not yet written a script is very different from the message that we're going to deliver to a physician who's been writing scripts for all of their erosive esophagitis patients, and we want them to start thinking about their non-erosive patients who are still experiencing breakthrough pain. And so it's very different messaging as a physician is graduating in their use of the product. So deliver a message that's appropriate for the physician at their stage of adoption, deliver messages to the right physicians, and make sure, and obviously in the current world, the market access environment is critical, make sure that you've got market access that makes it easy for the physician to prescribe. So the dimension on that we put in place is not only do we have good payer coverage, where 80% of commercial lives are covered with this product, but we also set up a partnership with Blink that enables a physician to write a script and know that their patient's going to get access to the product so that we take out market access hurdles. If the product gets covered, patient can get it with a $25 copay. If it's not covered, they can access a $50 cash pay price. That reduces the barrier to adoption for the physician, which allows a physician to write a prescription without worrying about whether or not their patient's going to be able to get access to it. So it's really about be at the right customers, deliver the right message based upon where that customer is, have clarity in that messaging. And we're actually doing some work right now to iterate and clarify our message and really hone it. And we've got a new head of marketing that came in who is doing a lot of really good work around how do we optimize this message? How do we make this more clear? And how do we deliver this in a more compelling way? But be in front of the right customers, deliver the right message for where the physician is in their adoption journey and solve the access problem. And then you've got launch excellence in a really meaningful way.
No, I think you summed that up very well, Steve. The question I have as a follow-up is really which parts of commercialization do you believe can truly be systemized out of curiosity?
So I think you can get to more systematic adoption of various elements of it. What I just don't see transitioning away from in this industry is the human-to-human contact of a rep in an office, having a conversation with a physician, being able to read the hesitation points, being able to read the pause that happens when you're talking about something and you go, Doc, is that an area where you've really got a question? How can we address that for you? That skill set and that human contact is just critical in how human beings make decisions. And we can automate all the emails in the world, and we can automate all of the messaging, and we can send non-personal promotion kinds of things out, and we can make sure that we're advertising in the right place where physicians are looking for information. And we can certainly automate online CME programs and online medical education that allows physicians to go deep when they're searching for information. But what you can't replace is the in-person teaching that happens when a rep or an MSL is in an office having a conversation with a clinician, really understanding their hesitation points and imparting that moment that gets them to think differently about how to use the product.
It's almost as if you again predicted where I was about to go next, Steve, which was everything around digital and artificial intelligence and in HCP education. Even during the time you and I have gotten the opportunity to have that first dinner in Palo Alto, again, incredible dinner, incredible meal. So much has evolved and so much continues to change in the world. I mean, this in the backyard in Palo Alto, there's so much happening and all things related to artificial intelligence. And it's almost impossible to think of the commercial narrative these days without digital and AI having some place in that. And I hear you loud and clear, like the human piece, the human element is critical, it's core. But out of curiosity, how do you think about digital and AI playing that complementary role to what's happening today in education?
So I think I think that the direction you're going is absolutely where the entire industry is headed, and not just our industry, but literally every industry is headed toward how do we think about integrating digital communications much more effectively in the sales process. And in some areas, I mean, you and I collaborated in the past in the context of one of my prior companies that was doing a digital therapeutic. And if you are selling a purely digital product, then purely digital promotion makes a lot of sense. In this case, where we're selling a physical product, where sampling becomes really important and how the physician is thinking about patient selection becomes really important, the in-person communication is critical. It's supplemented, as you described, with a series of digital and AI-driven enhancements. So we're looking at AI as a facilitator of how do we optimize our sales calls? How do we determine which physicians are likely to evolve on their journey of adoption and what key messages are appropriate, and guide the sales organization in the context of how do you have those communications? How do you follow up a sales call with appropriate touches to the physician, whether it's an email reminder or other touch points or having NPP contact points that complement the sales call so that when you've got an in-personal communication, you can have the follow-up that makes it more memorable and really cements the learning that was delivered, and how closely can you integrate those two. Those systems aren't optimized yet, but more and more people are doing those well. And we're just at the front end of thinking about how do we do that efficiently. That's not been a thing that we've integrated adequately yet, but it's a direction we clearly want to go, is linking the human interaction with the digital connection points and the digital reinforcement points, so you can reinforce the message that just got delivered. And I think that's going to make every sales call more effective and more efficient. And it's going to mean that, a rep can see more physicians in a week, can have more impact, and maybe fewer sales calls required to drive physician adoption, which creates much more efficiency in the system over time, so that, the same sales team can cover more physicians. We have an almost, unlimited universe of physicians that we can expand into. Right now, we're just calling on gastroenterologists in the top decile or two of primary care physicians, depending upon territory. But there are a whole bunch more physicians that can use our product that we can reach out to over time as we get more and more efficient in this process.
Totally makes sense. I mean, the other thing that I've been keeping a close eye on as well is the fact that so much in digital and AI is really addressing so much of the digital blind spots that exist between both patient education as well as HCP education. But I like how you described the point around how this enables the rep to see many more physicians. And especially as we move more and more into the age of reliable agents, it'll be interesting to see how, one rep might be able to digitally clone themselves and have way more of those interactions with far greater number of agents, i.e. how can that one rep clone themselves to become 10? Because I'm sure, Steve, in your world, there is, if I told you, Steve, you probably tell me, Chase, I need an unlimited number of reps. If budget wasn't an issue, I'd love to have an unlimited number of reps. Is that true or false?
No, actually don't. I don't think we need an unlimited number of reps. Okay. No. I mean, for example, we're maxed out right now on the number of calls that we think we can make to gastroenterologists. Mm-hmm. We've got a sales force that allows us to call as frequently as we want on the gastroenterology audience. Because quite honestly, a gastroenterologist doesn't want a rep in their office more than once a week. I mean, once you're 4 calls, 5 calls a month, you're not going to show up every day. They don't really want to see. So there's only a certain amount of time. But that call can be more effective if we can add other touch points in other mechanisms, more digital calls. The AI agent, for example, you could imagine a world where the AI agent is managing sample inventory in the offices, contacting the office to ask whether or not they've got samples. And some of the stuff that the rep is now doing that is more administrative in nature can happen more effectively, so that if we can free up 20% of our sales reps' time, great, we can add more targets to them and they can be calling on them and grow the business even more. And so there are, beyond our gastroenterology customers, there are ENTs that are prescribing PPIs. There are primary care physicians who are high prescribers of PPIs that we don't yet have the resources. And that's where we would add resources, to be able to call on other audiences.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm really excited to see how AI continues to help close the gap there and enabling reps to practice at the top of their license. We talk a lot about HCPs being able to practice at the top of their license. I think the same will happen with reps as well.
I think it's a great analogy. Reps spend a ton of time doing administrative work that they don't need to be doing. I mean, how much time do they spend organizing lunches to be able to come in? The really valuable stuff is the conversation you're having when you're at the lunch. The valuable stuff is not figuring out how many people need to put in a lunch order and how do you place the order and how do you go pick it up. That part could be automated with an AI agent so that the rep is in the office having the substantive conversations and doing the really high value stuff. So can we, reduce administrative burden and improve efficiency of time? All of that is being implemented. That's going to happen over the next 1 or 2 years. I think we're on the cusp of a transition that will improve efficiency in a meaningful way in the next 2 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to your point earlier, being able to, between the rep visits, enable that HCP to still get access to the content, simplify workflows from their side. That's where I agree with you. AI is definitely going to have an impact.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, look, I mean, running a commercial stage biotech is fundamentally different than leading earlier stage organizations. How has your leadership style evolved now that you're, again, responsible not just for strategy, but for real capital deployment, revenue expectations, patient outcomes? Out of curiosity, how has your leadership style changed since the Steve I met a few years ago?
Well, I think the operative word there is leadership, that I don't have to manage all of this stuff. I need to set direction. And I have the good fortune of having an extraordinary management team in the organization, some of whom were there at the time that I joined, and some have joined since then. But, just on the commercial team, for example, since we're talking about commercialization, our head of sales just absolutely rock solid, totally gets how do we motivate a team and focus on delivering excellent outcomes in every sales call. Our new head of marketing that just came in is revamping our messaging in ways that, candidly, she brings deeper insights than I would ever bring to it. She's, got years of experience doing this really effectively. Our head of market access has done just a rock star job of making sure that we solved the access problem for many plans, and for every patient, they can either get access directly through coverage or they can get access through the cash pay alternative. So have people in the right seats that are talented and capable and provide, and my leadership role is really around providing direction. What is the direction that we collectively want to go? What is the outcome that we want to achieve? And create that directional guidance and then allow them to execute in their areas of expertise. Because, across the entire organization in each of our functional areas, we've got folks that know their business and know their activities much better than I ever would. So I just need to set the direction and then let them thrive.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know that a good number of our listeners in this podcast, Steve, it's not just physicians, but it's brand leaders, executives. Out of curiosity, just to jump a little bit into some advice, they might be looking for. So many brand leaders they're operating in a post-blockbuster world, right? With increasing payer constraints. You and I have talked about that before, less tolerance for inefficiencies. What advice would you give brand leaders trying to win in this environment?
So I don't know that there's universal advice for every brand in every category, because every category is different. We happen to be in a category, for example, it's interesting. People talk about our category as having lots of competition. I actually don't view our category as having any competition. We simply have a landscape where there's a current standard of care. And what we are trying to do is find which patients need to emerge from that standard of care to a new standard of care with our product being introduced. But we don't actually have a competitive sales force out trying to pitch other good treatments. It's just we have a 30-year habit that physicians have had of using particular products. And so we're trying to change it. So our landscape is very different from the landscape that a brand leader would have if you were launching a new oncology drug, for example, that had 5 competing products, all in the immuno-oncology mechanisms that were all trying to gain market share. That competitive environment is just very different. So for us, the key variable was understanding the patient journey. Key variable is understand who needs our product, who is going to be motivated enough to seek out our product at the patient level and physician level, and for whom does it solve the problem so compellingly that they're willing to go through the prior authorization requirement in a world where they can just write a generic omeprazole script and not have to do any work. So a physician can write a script for a PPI, never have to do any more work. It's going to go through. It's a generic. It's zero cost to the patient. That's easy. So you need to have the activation energy to get over the hurdle that there's going to be a copay associated with our product, and you're going to have to write a prior authorization, and you're going to have to work through this process. And so for which patients is there enough motivation to solve that problem? Understanding the patient journey. Where are those patients? Who are those patients? And where are those patients where the motivation level, the need level is high enough that physicians and patients will be motivated to overcome these hurdles? That's what drove us to refocus the organization from a primary care audience where most primary care physicians think that most of their patients are adequately treated with PPIs. And that's true. 70% of their patients are adequately treated with PPIs. So in fact, their experience is real. Most of their patients are fine. Most gastroenterologists are seeing those patients who are still in pain. So most of their patients are not adequately treated with a PPI. So they are much more motivated to find a solution for their patients, and their patients are motivated to find a solution. They were motivated enough that they asked for a referral, got to the referral, were willing to get scoped. This is a patient who's really motivated to find an answer. They're willing to pay a $25 copay. So understand the patient journey, understand the patient motivation and the physician motivation, and then go to the place where you're needed. And that's where you're going to get the best traction. At least that was our experience. Different rules will apply for different products in different categories.
And Steve, when you and I met, I don't know if you know this again, but it's been about 5 years.
It has been a while.
Dinner.
That's right.
How are you thinking about things differently today versus Palo Alto dinner circa 2019?
Well, I think that the entire market, clearly the market access rules are becoming more rigorous in the context of utilization management as more drugs have been introduced that are creating a cost burden. The need to manage the utilization of those drugs, there's just a balance in the industry that is evolving as more products are introduced and as more of that rigor gets implemented. And the industry is changing so rapidly with the adoption of AI around physician decision-making, the adoption of AI around the whole market act prior authorization process, the adoption of AI in the context of marketing initiatives and in the context of sales initiatives. It's interesting. We don't live in a tech world. I mean, we're not doing software. So, when we make physical drugs and distribute physical drugs to patients, that doesn't seem like a tech-driven world, but the technology enablement is changing so many of the things we're doing. And we are just in real time taking our organization through the realization of what impacts is that going to have on our business.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Steve, I feel like I could talk to you for many, many hours. And, I know that you're not allowed to comment on what I'm about to say, so I'm not asking you to comment, but I will ask, what date did you join as CEO?
April 1st.
So again, what I will say based on the data is that since April 1st, 2025, the company has performed quite well. I mean, the stock has been up pretty significantly since you've taken over the reins as CEO, Steve. And I have to say, based on all of our discussions, the way that you think as a first principled thinker and as a leader, I have not been surprised to see the growth rate since you've joined. So I'm allowed to say that.
That's very kind of you.
You can't say that, but I'm allowed to say that. So
that's very kind of you. I actually think that it's the work of the entire team. Our team has rallied around the new strategy and has executed it, just beautifully. I'm so grateful to so many of our team members for the extraordinary efforts.
And another lesson for you brand leaders listening, take note. Remember, it's team above self, as Steve just rightly pointed out. So, no, Steve, this has been a lot of fun. I definitely want to have you on again. I feel like there's a part 2 and a part 3 to this conversation. So we should definitely continue it very, very soon.
Well, this is a lot of fun. I'd pick this up anytime. So just let me know whenever you want to chat.
Done. I love it. Thanks, Steve.
Perfect.